Welcome to Stitchery Stories, where textile artists share their life in fabric and thread, inspiration, techniques, disasters and delights. And I'm Susan Reeks, enthusiastic embroiderer and textile art dabbler who also loves podcasting. So take a break and enjoy our light-hearted chat, and please share with your friends so they can enjoy it too. Hello and welcome today to our lovely guest, Louise Gardiner. Hi Louise.
Hi Susan.
It's brilliant to speak to you today. It's actually taken us quite a while to get this organised. We seem to have, things have cropped up and we've had to reorganise. But anyway, yay, today we finally managed to speak. So it's lovely to speak to you.
We made it.
So I've got a bio here for Louise. I am a British designer maker from Cheshire in the northwest of England, producing unique embroidered artworks. Drawing freely with thread on a domestic sewing machine, I convey my complex organic designs onto linen and canvas with energy and precision. From embroidered illustrations to large-scale artworks and commemorative quilts, my dynamic embroideries showcase the highest levels of craft and technique, layering applique with intense stitching and hand-sewn beads, so the works shimmer with magical depth and catch the changing light. Embroidery is an exciting medium with endless possibilities, and I'm a passionate ambassador of Stitch. This amazing, historic and humble communicative medium can really pack a punch. I'm an experienced teacher and I travel around the world to lead workshops and lecture on the creative potential of drawing with Stitch. And I have also exhibited my work internationally in France, New Zealand, the Netherlands, Australia and India. In 2016, I launched a range of luxury silk and velvet fabrics using high-resolution photography and digital printing to create scarves, pillows, poufs, kimonos and jumpsuits from my designs. My experience as a maker and as a teacher has shown me embroidery's power to inspire sharing, energy and creativity. Through my work, I aim to create new opportunities for interaction with this authentic and exciting medium. Well, there we are. That's a very enthusiastic bio, Louise. Thank you very much for that. So, given all of that excitement, before we get further into your Stitchery story today, Louise, would you like to share with us what you're working on and what has got you excited?
Well, at the moment, I'm working on photographing about 30 velvet pillows and poufs ready for Christmas.
Oh, that sounds lovely.
I'm collecting them later today. They've been actually assembled and stitched by my friend Mrs. Moon, and she has been making them over the last 2 months for me, on and off in between her upholstery business. And they're all different, and they're all big, velvet, squashy, colourful pieces. So they're kind of like artworks, really, except that they're very squashy.
Now, you've shared one of the images with me of, or a couple actually of the poufs, and they are absolutely beautiful. They are really, really lovely. So that'd be really nice to see those all photographed up, won't it? And then finding lots of happy homes to go and live in.
Oh, I do hope so. I mean, they're quite a labour of love, the poufs, to start with, because they're all individually printed. And I do most freelance artists, I do most of the jobs myself, so it's lovely to have someone else stitch them. But I'm going to be photographing them on our family farm, which is a National Trust place up in Cheshire.
Oh, right.
And I'm just praying that it won't rain, because I'll be doing most of it outside, because I prefer the natural daylight than studio light.
Yes, I think it's kinder on fabrics, isn't it?
It is. It gives a softer look, I think. It gives them more true, a trueness to their character. And the farm is very old, and we've got lots of sort of lovely old walls and surfaces that they look great against. So I'm going to be, using a wheelbarrow and trying to keep everything beautifully clean at the same time as getting everything done. So it's going to be fun.
So that's going to be an interesting challenge for this week then. Yes, so that's very exciting, isn't it? And it was nice to note there in your bio about your range of your fabrics and the things that you're making from your work as well. I think that's a really good extension. It's nice to see things on walls, but I think it's also lovely to branch out into things that are kind of useful, and it's a different market, isn't it, as well, a house market?
It is. I mean, it's enabled me to survive as an artist, really. I mean, it has made my career a lot more complex, and I have to say, dealing with manufacture, stock and delivery is a headache. But it has been a wonderful way of extending my portfolio and helping cash flow. But also it's great because I used to find explaining what I do so difficult, and now I'll wear one of my silk scarves and they are basically the embroidered artworks printed exactly. And so now I can sort of take them off and explain my work, and other people can then, if they love them, they might invest in one and they'll wear them. And it's just a lovely way of the artwork having more of a life to it. And of course, like every other career, we all need, cash flow throughout the year. So it's been a great way for me to survive.
Yeah, and that's a really important point. And quite often we have lovely discussions about creating beautiful pieces of art, etc., but it's not often that we have a good discussion about the business aspects of art. So that's really interesting for you to highlight those. And yeah, it is. I work for myself as well, and cash flow, it is the same. We all face the same challenges, and it's also interesting bringing out the challenges, therefore, of a different. You've got other things to do. We have to wear yet more hats, don't we? To say dealing with orders and manufacturing and all the other things that go with it.
So many hats.
Yeah.
So many hats. I mean, I would say that of all the hats, the creativity hat, the one that actually sits down to create the artwork, is the one you wear the least. I wish I had a chance to wear that hat more often, but I'm too busy flying around and doing all the other aspects of the business, which I think often a lot of people would be quite shocked about that, because people's perception of artists and designers can be quite different to the reality. And I'm not saying, I really enjoy the design aspect and the business aspect, but it would be nice to be able to get into the studio to be creative more, I have to say.
Yeah. Well, we'll come back to that point in a minute. So that's your main excitement. Have you got anything else kind of in the works that you might want to share with us at this point, Louise?
I had a good fun week last week, actually. I was filming with Channel 4 for the Kirsty Allsop's Handmade Christmas. It's not a programme I've ever really watched myself much, because I don't have a telly. I do watch stuff on my computer, but I really enjoyed it, a lot more than I expected. And I don't know if I can tell you, it might be a secret, but I was working with Kirsty Allsop on that programme, and that will be coming out just before Christmas. So it was lovely to meet other people and to do some television and presenting work, which I love, because unlike a lot of people's perception of an embroidery artist, I love the stage, and I love chatting and making people laugh and teaching and communicating with people about creativity. So I really had a good time. It was
brilliant. Great. And it's quite funny you should mention the Kirsty's Handmade Christmas, because a guest from about a month ago, Jane Emerson, she had some quite funny stories to tell. She was also involved in one of those, a couple of those programs, and so she had some quite funny stories to share with us about how that worked out for her. So if anybody else wants to hear about Kirsty's Handmade Christmas, then go and listen to Jane Emerson as well. So.
Oh yeah, brilliant! No, I'd love to hear those, because I'm not quite sure what I can tell you at this point.
Yeah, no, I understand all of that. Right, so you mentioned there about your love of teaching and how excited you are about embroidery and stuff. So how did you actually get interested in embroidery and textile art, Louise? And who taught you? What did you do?
I did a fantastic foundation course at Manchester, and I had a wonderful tutor called Tony Ratcliffe, who's now retired, and also Joan Beadle, must mention Joan. And they got me into making things with my hands. And being a farmer's daughter, it came very naturally for me to kind of work my hands, so to speak, and to start creating things, three-dimensional things. So I remember wrapping hay around wire and making sort of small cows and hens, and doing all sorts of very detailed and three-dimensional sort of objects. And they sort of saw that textile element in my work and suggested that I apply to Goldsmiths, which was a very prestigious textiles course in London, which sadly now doesn't exist, like a lot of these courses. And I went to Goldsmiths, and within the first year I was put on an industrial sewing machine, and we tried lots of other textile mediums, from weaving and silkscreen printing and dyeing fabrics and constructing fabrics. And I was put on this sewing machine, and I just literally was off.
Yeah,
that was it.
You fell in love.
As if I was driving a racing car. I was woof. Yeah. And it just suited me. It suited my personality and my spontaneity, and the fact that you don't really have to plan, and you can, I saw it as this sort of fantastic, kind of drawing machine that I could be completely spontaneous with, and started to make these embroidered drawings of people in London. And it all started there in a very figurative way.
That's really good. So what kind of inspirations do you kind of feed off and enthuse about?
I always find it interesting where inspiration comes from, because I just find it so multifaceted. I feel that it comes from all of the senses, and music inspires me hugely. I'm a big fan of playing music in my studio. That helps me to kind of get in flow, so to speak. But I would say also the outdoors, which might seem a rather obvious answer, saying that nature inspires me, but it's such a hugely powerful and inspiring presence in all of our lives, and it never ceases to astound me how the seasons change. And as I walk my dog, I see things changing and decaying and coming back to life and renewing. That sense, that sort of cyclic, sort of the seasons of life really inspires my work, because I feel that it connects so closely to me emotionally with the things that go on in my life. At the early part of my career, my work was very much about humour, and it was very light, and lots of people dancing, and that was a huge aspect of who I am. But then as I got a bit older and things in my life, some things happened, like my dad got Parkinson's, and a few things happened in my life that really had a weighty presence. Then my work naturally started to change as I translated those emotions and expressed myself more honestly with the world. So, in some ways my work is about energy and joy and love and dynamism. On the other hand, it's also about the fragility and the sensitivity of life and how fleeting it is. So it's sort of balancing lots of things together.
Yeah, and
we do, don't we? That's what we're all doing. We're all balancing a million plates.
Yeah.
Should I say spinning a million plates, balancing a lot of hats?
I think I'm going to say, let's get the plates and hats in there, definitely. Yeah. I think in terms of the organic nature of your work, you can see the natural inspirations in, say, for example, the scarves and the poufs. It's all very branches and organic, and it kind of weaves in together. And it is very, I think you described it as being intense. Yeah, just quite an organic feel to it, definitely.
So, I'm fascinated with twigs and sprouts of growth, not sprouts at Christmas, but sprouts of growth, lichen and coral and things that grow on things, and how something can start off as something very simple, and then through the elements, the shape changes, like the tumbleweeds I did for the Saatchi Gallery, or, the ingredients I used on the Pukka cape. It's all about how those ingredients and how those organic forms affect us or are affected by the environment, which is an analogy for how we as humans are affected by all that goes on around us, and how important it is to stay connected with nature.
Yes, it is. Now, I've just realised that yet again I forgot to do your links. So before we get on to, we'll mention the Pukka cape a bit more. So the best place to find out about Louise is on your website, isn't it, Louise? lougardner.co.uk. And I'll put all of these links in Louise's episode on the Stitchery Stories website as well. And you are also busy on Instagram, which is where I particularly follow you, and you've got your Facebook page as well. Right then, Louise, so you've mentioned about the Pukka, it's the Pukka Cape of Empowerment, which was a real highlight from, was it last year you were doing that or the year before? Anyway, would you like to just talk us through that? Because I think it's a really nice story as well as being an absolutely beautiful piece of work.
Yeah, thank you very much. I worked on that last year. It took over 900 hours.
Wow.
It was mainly me that created it. I had the help of 3 assistants at separate points, who were either doing a bit of beading for me on the side or helping me structure the collar. And they were all fantastic young people who have recently graduated. So, but the cape, really, I started designing from scratch. and it was for Pukka Herbs.
Right.
They commissioned me to make an artwork that would celebrate women. So it felt like quite a responsibility at the beginning of. They were doing this project to celebrate our connection with nature and women's creativity. So it made sense not to make something for the wall and to actually adorn somebody. You know, the figure became the main objective for me. You know, I thought, how can I make it universal? Something that would celebrate all women, not, you know. And if I did, you know, at first I was thinking of doing just, a figurative piece of a fantastic goddess type figure in the middle. But then I thought that the actual woman should become the artwork. So I'll wrap her up and make her, you know, the being to be celebrated. And so I'd recently been to see Superwoman, and I just thought, well, I should make my own superhero cape.
Yeah.
So it was sort of, and then did lots of research into all these fantastic herbs that help women's hormonal health and support women's cyclic sort of the seasons of being a woman, and childbirth and menopause and menstruation, all of this. So all these plants that are naturally there for us to help ourselves. And then the whole thing got combined, and I made this cloak of ingredients that sort of, you know, wraps up the viewer and makes them feel protected like a warrior or a queen. So it was a super challenging but fantastic project. It did nearly kill me, but I did love it.
Well, sometimes all the best projects, that's one of the defining factors. Did it nearly kill you?
It did. Yeah. I mean, it was the cape. It was called the Cape of Empowerment. And I photographed over 500-600 people in it last year, going to, you know, I basically went to various venues, from a hospice to a school for adults with learning disabilities. And we went to Stylist in London with Pukka, and I was literally lifting this cape onto person after person after person.
Wow.
And it was just getting the most emotional and amazing response from each woman and men. Men tried it on as well, and they loved it. It was physically exhausting and mentally exhausting, because I was, you know, meeting and sort of embracing people into this project for about 6 months. And so by the end of it, I felt, you know, my shoulders were absolutely killing from lifting this thing and photographing people. But it was just so worthwhile. And I even, as a little tiny story within that project, not only did I make new friends through this cape, you know, people that maybe I would never have met in my normal life.
Yes.
You know, I made a brilliant friend out of this Jamaican lady in Bristol who I literally cycled after her in the street and asked her to be involved in it, because I just thought, I don't know any, you know, Jamaican women, and I want to know some Jamaican women. And so I just went, hi, I'm Lou, and I introduced myself, and now we're great friends. So really good. And then there was a lady in our village called Betty Allen, and Betty was 96, and she'd lived in Style for about 30 years. And, you know, she lived on her own in a little cottage, and her cottage looked out onto one of our fields. So whenever our cows were in that field, she used to ring us and say how lovely it was to be able to watch them. And I used to visit her occasionally and gave her a silk scarf just to, you know, just because I loved her, really. One day I went round with the cape, and she was, you know, getting quite frail. She'd been quite poorly, but we managed to get her to stand up with her Zimmer frame, and we wrapped her in the cape, and I filmed her, and we did this little interview of her. And she said the most touching and amazing things about, you know, how fleeting life is and how important it is to treasure the moment and to love and to give to others. And I got it all on film, and it was so touching. I mean, everyone I showed it to was very moved. Anyway, she died this year, so that's been an amazing thing to capture.
Yes, very much so.
You know, so the breadth of the people that wore this cape was amazing, because it was Gail, my Jamaican friend, and then there was Betty, who was 96, and then there was about 300 young trendsters in London, and a young Down syndrome man in Bradford-on-Avon wore it and rapped in it, so it was great. Absolutely lovely.
It sounds absolutely brilliant. And, those stories, you call it, it was called the Cape of Empowerment, and it seems to have had, as you say, like a magical effect in just bringing people together. And as much as I'm sure every ounce of your creativity and energy was drained by the end of it, it's created something really wonderful. And the story about Betty there, well, I'm sure we're all in tears just about now.
Yeah, no, she was amazing. She was such a simple, straightforward woman. She really reminded me of being straightforward, and there were women putting the cape on who only had a couple of months to live. There were, men who'd lost their wives. There was all sorts of stories. And this was, although it was emotionally and physically challenging in every respect. And I have to say, for January and February of this year, I just found myself staring at a wall quite a lot. But it also inspired me to be more philanthropic with my work and to reach out and teach in different ways rather than teach face to face to a group of 12 people who can afford a workshop. I thought, actually, I want to be doing bigger projects with people and spreading, creative inspiration and magic to people who feel that maybe they are beyond that. They haven't got any creativity.
Yeah. So is that where the stitchacloud idea came from then, Louise?
Yes, it is, Susan. It was at exactly the same time. I lay in bed one night and thought, I've just been teaching in Australia, and I thought, how can I reach out to all these people about this project, and how can I involve other women and get women to connect? And even the loneliness of embroidery was reminding me that I have a choice. I could just sit at home and be solitary and let the project completely drain me, or I could reach out. So I did.
Right.
And I said on Instagram, I'm launching this project which celebrates the feminine, and that's the feminine in all things, in men, in women, in nature, everything. Does anyone want to stitch me a cloud? Because these clouds are going to gather from all over the world. And then a few clouds, I got a few requests for clouds, and then a few more. And then, it's like 20, 30, 70, 80, 150.
Wow.
And at first I was sending these clouds, and I suddenly realised, I was spending about 500, 600 quid on postage to get these clouds out. And I thought, oh my God, I'm going to have to start a template. But then it became a template on the computer. First there was a few quite simple clouds came back, but then they just got more and more beautiful.
Wow.
And the most amazingly embellished stitch clouds started arriving from Hong Kong, Australia, New Zealand, France, Wales.
Brilliant.
Vienna. It was phenomenal. And what was even better was it was a digitally instigated project on Instagram that became a handmade, hand-stitched and embellished project that arrived through my letterbox in envelopes from all over the world. So, and they didn't just arrive, the clouds, they sent me letters sharing their stories about their lives but giving me encouragement and telling me that I was doing a good job, which was so important because I was, struggling a bit. And I was opening these envelopes, and every day I was having a damn good cry and a laugh, They were sharing things with me that I was like, I felt so privileged.
Yeah. I'm saying how wonderful that, people have shared those things with you in creating the clouds as well. As you say, a cloud hasn't just turned up in the post. There's been a letter and some thought put into it, and, sharing emotions and ideas and stuff. So that's, it just comes back to that sense of community, doesn't it? That we're all, I think, in some aspects of our lives can be lacking, and I think it's wonderful to see textile art and embroidery being used as a catalyst to keep bringing people back together.
Yes, I think it's so true, Susan. I was amazed and inspired by it. I just thought, wow. So then I became really responsible. I thought, well, I've got to do something really special with this. It actually became quite a weighty, responsible project, which is still going now. And it's taken months of organisation and photography and has been a real journey and is still going on. And in fact, this week I'm designing a cloud scarf in silk to celebrate the project. And I've chosen about 35 of the clouds. I mean, to be honest, it was so difficult to choose because they were amazing. But I just thought I've got to get some quite powerful ones on this scarf. And then a percentage of those sales are going to help run the project and also go to a women's charity, which I still have to decide which one. So it's been quite a journey.
Yeah, and that's quite an interesting way of carrying the project on as well. As you say, because all of these things we do with the best of intentions, and then you kind of think, well, crikey, I've spent all this money on postage, or, you know, and it's lovely, but then at the end of the day, we've still got the electric bill to pay and etc. So, it is nice to give our time and give of ourselves as well. Sometimes we do have to come back to the life of making a living as well.
Oh, totally. I mean, you know, I can quite honestly say that my income has taken a nosedive because of this project. I'm no means playing the violin about this, because I suppose I've become more of a hippie in my old age, and I think that, you know, this is really what life's about. It's about putting love into the world. And if you are prepared to take that risk, then love will come back at you and you will find a way forward. And I've made this cape out of the clouds now, which I have to say I am struggling to fit other work in around it. So it's quite a slow process because I haven't got the support systems really to make the project run smoothly. But it's also at the same time a very difficult project to let go because I like to finish things properly. So the scarf feels like a good way to self-fund, also for people to have a memento. I just feel really bad for the clouds that aren't on the scarf. I wish I could do a scarf for every single cloud, you know. So
no, I think that'd be something for us to look forward to seeing as well. So obviously you've mentioned there about your different, you particularly like applique. So can we have a quick chat there about any specific aspect of your techniques that you'd like to share with us, and then we could have a move on to see if we've got any UFOs lurking around anywhere.
I find it very difficult to keep things simple. And you know, my work is it's very intricate and complex, and it's almost a bit of every time I start a piece of work, it feels like a bit of a pilgrimage really now, because I find it impossible to do small, simple pieces because I've got so much to say, as you can see. So I'm trying to sort of simplify things a little bit because obviously it would help me save time and money. But my applique is very multi-layered, and I love using all different unusual fabrics. And you know, I even once I've appliqued and painted and embroidered each piece, which takes however long, I then hand bead them all as well. I find that's almost like the calm after the crazy storm. I think I'm only just beginning to realise how unique and how limited I am in creating these big pieces now. You know, I found that physically machine embroidery is pretty hard on your body.
Yes.
You know, it's my favourite medium, and I'm determined to continue to push the boundaries and create work that, you know, demands an emotional response from people, which my work does seem to do, which is wonderful. I suppose if I was to tell anyone else about learning about technique, is just keep doing it. You know, you get to become a master of the tiniest of things.
Totally. And that's it, isn't it? It's keeping going, keep doing it, keep trying, keep pushing.
Just keep pushing and don't expect to get somewhere overnight. You know, be patient. You know, I've been doing this now for 25 years and it has quite literally exhausted me on so many levels, but it is also the most powerful and beautiful communicative artwork. So just got to keep on going. Keep trusting.
Keep sewing.
Keep stitching, keep drawing.
So Louise, one of the other things that I definitely noticed on Instagram was in the summer you were busy at Chelsea Flower Show, weren't you? So I take it that must have been quite a highlight of your career and your journey so far, along with the cape and the clouds and all the rest of it.
Oh, yeah, Susan, it was one of the best things I've ever done.
Wow.
I absolutely loved it. It was such fun. It sounds very glamorous, but I was negotiating an exhibition in Hong Kong, and I'd been offered some funding to go to Hong Kong and exhibit my work in this very sort of big indoor air-conditioned designer space somewhere. And it all sounded a bit scary, to be honest. They wanted about 30 pieces off me, and I kept trying to explain that was impossible. I had 5 months before they wanted me to start the exhibition, and I was hugely flattered. But I was thinking, oh no, you know,
how do I do all that?
What happens if I say no? If I actually say no, then where do I go? You know, the new year is always pretty scary as a freelancer. You don't know what the year's going to bring. And so I thought, I'm going to, you know, a big part of trying to progress as a person and an artist is learning to say no to the right opportunities, or to yes to the right opportunities.
Yeah, that's very, very true.
But actually, so it's easy to talk about saying yes, but actually sometimes you do have to say no. I had given myself a deadline, and that day I was like, right, I'm going to let them know today that I'm sorry, but I just can't do it. It's not physically possible. Yeah. And I got an email from the RHS inviting me to exhibit at Chelsea in a sponsored summer house with Malvern Buildings. And the Malvern collection they give 4 or 5 invited artisans to a summer house to choose, and you exhibit in the kind of the green area of Chelsea Flower Show. So I chose my building and was asked to design it from scratch, and even from the colour of the outside and inside. And then I had to get my van and take all the furniture and prepare new pieces of work. And I had a big velvet ottoman that I created and new velvet poufs. And then, of course, my silk scarves. And I took my sewing machine with me. You can see pictures of all of this on my website. And it
was absolutely beautiful. It really just was it just looked lovely. I thought you did a smashing job of it, basically.
Oh, thank you so much. You know, it was a real risk. And I remember people saying to me, so what colour are you, painting it? And I said, black gloss. And people just look at me as if I was mad. I was like, black gloss inside and out. And it was fantastic because I knew, well, I hoped, I didn't know until I actually saw it, but all the colours that I use would ping out of, ding out of the blackness. And with careful lighting and, a nice big rug on the floor and flowers. And we planted all outside and even painted some decking outside black. Just drew people in. It was like a treasure trove.
Yeah.
Some amazing people. I met Joanna Lumley came in, and I met Paul Smith, who I recently visited in London. And, it was just fabulous. I met so many people from all walks of life, and the response to my work blew me over, because having had this sort of post-Cape blues and this as ever totally fragile career where I don't know where the next turn is and how I'm going to make a living this year, to suddenly having this loving injection of enthusiasm saying, you are on the right track, girl, keep going. And it was ace. It was absolutely brilliant.
Fabulous.
Loved it.
Now, that's one of the key things. I'm in a freelancers environment, supporting other people online, digital marketing and so on. And one of the things we say is, you come across, and sometimes a client opportunity comes and you think, it's not right for me. We often talk about the bravery of saying no. And it always sounds a bit trite to say, sometimes say no. If that's what your gut's telling you, say no, because that's freed up some space for something better to come along. And do you know what? It works every damn time. It really, it's happened to me, it's happened to so many people, and it happened to you. So
really lovely to hear you say that, Susan, because I think that what you're using the word space, I think space is so important. You really do need to recognise leaving quiet space in your life. I really believe in this. And I think that when you have the courage to look at the space and not fill it all the time with the stuff that we all think we should be doing all of the time, bang, 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 living a fast life. I think if we have space, then we can reflect and carve our journeys better. So, I'm really glad you said that.
Yeah, and it's scary because we've got bills to pay, but
yes, it is really
it seriously does work.
I'm scared every single day about that sort of thing, and I have to keep reminding myself that, the answer is that we don't need much.
Yeah.
We just don't need much. We think we do, But, you know, so we don't need much money and we need less stuff and we need more creativity.
Well, I think that's very true. And I think on that point, I know we could talk all day, but at some point we have to press the off button here.
Hope that we've inspired some people to really search their souls for their creativity and do stuff that makes them happy.
I really, really hope so. Obviously, we've got to look forward to Kirsty's Handmade Christmas then to see you on there. So that'll be very interesting. Yeah. And
don't throw tomatoes at the television.
I'm sure it'll be wonderful. It might get us into the mood for Christmas. Don't talk to me about Christmas at the minute. Anyway, so have you quickly got any other sorts of things you want to share with us at the moment, Louise, before we wrap up for today?
No, I mean, you know, the usual message: buy less and buy British, and support British craftspeople, whether you're buying a postcard or a poof or a vase or whatever. Just support people, because it's so hard to survive, and we all need to, you know, stop going out and buying on Amazon. Am I allowed to say that? I'll probably get shot. Yeah, just put a beep.
Right, well, I think on that really positive note there, yes, it is. There's a whole community of creative people, and as in any walk of life, everybody needs to have a break and earn their income as well. So that's a really brilliant point to end on, Louise. So, do you know, fantastic. It's been so brilliant talking to you, and yeah, we've shared some different things than what we normally chat about. But I think personally, it's been a really enlightening conversation, and thank you so much for being courageous yourself in opening up to expressing for thoughts and feelings that, you know, possibly other people wouldn't do so. But I think it's made a really fantastic chat. So, thank you very much, Louise.
Thank you. Well, thank you for your fabulous questions and for doing this, because, you know, it takes courage, and I think that you deserve, you know, lots of listeners, and I'm sure that, you know, I look forward to listening to it myself and thinking, yeah.
Thinking, did I say those things?
Did I really say that on air? Yes, I did. Oh, dear.
Oh, dear. Well, it's been absolutely fantastic, Louise. Thank you so much. And everyone go and check out Louise's projects and her website and follow her on Instagram, because then you can find out what she's doing. And yeah, it'd be lovely to see those scarves. Really are absolutely gorgeous. Nice to see those and your poufs.
Thank you, Susan. I've really enjoyed it.
It's been an absolute pleasure, Louise. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. Take care of yourself.
If you liked this episode and want to hear more, then please join the Stitchery Stories fan club so you can get an email when a new episode is released. It's a quick and easy way of listening and of keeping up with any news and offers from our lovely guests. Please visit stitcherystories.com to join the fan club. Of course, if you have iTunes, then subscribe there to automatically get new episodes, and why not leave us a review and rating whilst you are there. So that is the end of our Stitchery story for today. So keep stitching, keep smiling, and keep creating your very own Stitchery stories.